a philosophy I firmly believe is 5 years from now, it's not whether you use AI, it's how well you use it compared to your competition. And I agree with that phrase. But the one thing is the AI can never pivot like a salesperson can and build that relationship. And that's what matters, is just the ability to listen to what the client wants and needs.
Right.
That is the number one skill.
Welcome to the Thrive Podcast, where we dive deep into tech entrepreneurship and strategic growth. I'm your host, Bill Potter, founder of Thrive Advisors, and I'm here to guide tech-led founders through the maze of challenges on their journey to maximizing enterprise valuation. Whether it's scaling your team, navigating market shifts, or unlocking new revenue streams, we'll explore actionable strategies and insights to help you thrive in today's competitive landscape. Join me as we uncover the secrets to strategic growth and success in tech startups. Get set for an electrifying episode of the Thrive Podcast with our guest, Bob Stabell. As an expert in transforming sales departments through fractional Chief Revenue Officer services, Bob brings invaluable insights. We'll explore his mantra, don't hire a mediocre sales manager, rent a great one, and dive into his framework for driving revenue growth. Prepare for a dynamic discussion on elevating sales leadership and the benefits of the fractional CRO model. Don't miss out. Welcome to the podcast, Bob.
Thank you, and I appreciate you having me on, Bill.
Great. Well, Bob, let's just dive right in. Could you give our viewers a concise overview of what a fractional CRO services include and how you implement them within your framework?
No, absolutely. So within our company, we actually do agile executive leadership as a service. I run the CRO division, and we have every C blank O, hence the name CXO, that you can think of. But in revenue, one of the things that over the years and with the experience that we have, I've seen just every mistake that every sales department can make. And with the advances in technology and with everything else that is occurring in the marketplace, sales departments are dramatically behind. And it's predominantly for two reasons. Executives don't know what to do with their salespeople. Sometimes the salespeople control the executive. And the other problem is there's not a process in place that works for the company to be able to go forward. Everything else you have a process for. You do, if you're going to build a machine, you have the process and the line. And if you're going to, offer a service, you have the process to go through to deliver that service. But in sales, it's much more freewheeling. It's much more people dependent. And they have their own processes that work for them instead of a proven and repeatable sales process. And so the important thing when you implement a proven repeatable sales process is that you take your C salespeople and turn them into Bs, you turn your Bs into As, and you turn your As into A pluses. So
makes sense.
That's the basics.
Well, and when you're coming up, so your organization, your fractional CRO, they will build that recipe. They'll find that magic formula.
Absolutely, because every organization is different.
Right.
You can sell widgets, you can sell services, you sell software and high tech, you sell yourself. Every process is just a little bit different. But unfortunately, people don't view it as there is a process for each one of those. Now, it's unique, and that takes discovery time and to figure it out. But once the process is in place, then if something should happen, your salesperson gets recruited away. Your salesperson is in an unfortunate accident or gets ill. Then someone can plug in, follow that process, and if they can have any reasonable talent, they'll be able to continue revenue growth. The other side of it then is dramatically showing companies how to dramatically increase their revenue and fast. Okay?
Tell me more about that.
Well, with all the advances in technology, marketing and sales tend to be very disconnected. And that's something we disagree with a lot. In that marketing gives and writes the messaging. And what is the secret to anything? Repetition, right? And when you have a message coming from marketing and a message coming from sales and they conflict, a lot of sales are lost as a result of that. Look, there will always be freestyling in a sales meeting because of the relationship build and the joke and then what's the key sales point. But the messaging should always be the same.
Right.
And, we've all heard of the famous sales funnel of,
Mm-hmm.
MQLs and SQLs. And I'm of the firm believer they should be the exact same thing, meaning that because repetition wins, that's why we all say M&M's melt in your mouth, not in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
When they're the same exact thing and the initial messaging is the same, there's no confusion with the client. It increases the credibility of the organization. And then it moves through the funnel much quicker simply because the messaging is consistent. Repetition, especially today, is more important than ever because people have a million things on their mind. And so you have to make sure the same message gets repeated over and over again.
So tell me a little bit about, obviously sales is a relationship business at the business to business level. And take me through, in terms of building that repeatable recipe. When you're looking at, you're typically going into these verticals, and when you're looking at those relationships, obviously the CRO is a very valuable position, but the actual salespeople themselves, are you recruiting those salespeople? Are you bringing them to bear within that sales organization?
Depends on the organization and what
Right,
it needs. We've come into companies that have a sales force,
right.
and then we have found the strengths and weaknesses within that sales force. And then we've come into where they have no sales program at all and started it from the ground up. So it kind of depends, but if we need to find a salesperson in that industry to help them, that is part of the service that we offer because we have to be watching everybody for all of our clients,
Mm-hmm.
making sure they're all performing and providing that leadership as a service. But that's one of the reasons why we do it. And we do have companies that, want to do an outsourced selling, but they have to understand we can do that for them as well. But it takes time to cook like anything else. And a lot of people, they'll hire and say, okay, we need results in 90 days. That's
Mm-hmm.
just unrealistic. It's going to take a little bit of time to get
Especially
it
with the sales
exactly right.
cycle.
Yeah, always.
Right.
Always.
Well, Thrive advisors, probably very much like your organization, will go in and do an assessment of where the company is, and it's all encompassing, but specific to sales. Describe your approach to the assessment process.
It's funny you mention that because we have dedicated software through what's called Sales QB that I'm
Mm.
certified in that actually does a complete audit of their sales process.
Mm.
And it only takes about an hour and a half of asking questions of key people, and then we're able to come back with a report that shows where their strengths and weaknesses are.
Mm-hmm.
That combined with an action plan of where we think we need to start. And then it's funny how it falls into about 6 areas, but not necessarily in order. Okay. Some companies, they want to dramatically increase lead generation
Mm-hmm.
because all they're doing is pounding the phone. Their marketing person may not be, generating leads for them. So we need to find a way to increase leads because the fastest way to grow is to have enough leads to turn into prospects, right?
Right.
Yet another organization we walked into, they had no salespeople and they were all engineers and they wanted those engineers to be the salespeople. So day one was sales 101, building out a deck and a presentation, going through and practicing and practicing and practicing. And now after a full year with that company, they're ready to go. Now we're doing the lead generation portion of it because now they need to generate lead. But their market is really specific. So, they don't have, 10,000 leads to go from. They have about 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be very targeted.
Right. So, success stories are always inspiring. Could you share, a compelling example of where you've implemented a fractional CRO and that model dramatically improved the performance of the sales trajectory?
Well, you have to look at it over the course of a year.
Right.
And the minimum we've ever done is 40%. And our best success story was over 300% of a startup.
Year over year growth.
Hmm.
That's very impressive.
Again, it's the process,
Right.
the people, and we were talking about those 6 steps. Most salespeople are trained on the product.
Mm-hmm.
They understand how to do a demonstration. They understand what the product does, but what they need is coaching, true coaching. A pro sitting there with them, doing the calls, giving them pointers, auditing calls and helping them get better.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily training and just cracking the whip, which is what
Right.
most people do is crack the whip. And it's not about that. It's about developing their skill set because the more skillful a salesperson they are, The product is not as important as the quality of the person in most cases.
So at 300% or even less than 300, 200 or 100%, do you find that you can outstrip the performance of the company to keep up?
Yes.
What do
We've
you
had people tell us to slow down sometimes.
and what do you do? Well, I mean, beyond slowing down, I mean, what have they done in response to, operationally or financially? Um, it can be a challenge for them because what happens is you're ballistically growing the company, and then they have to go through a period of consolidation in order to grow again.
That's one of the best questions. And I'm glad you asked me that because it's something that unless I'm asked, I forget to talk about. One of the biggest challenges for small businesses is forecasting.
Right.
And sales drives how many people they need to hire in delivery, production, coding, etc.
Mm-hmm.
A part of our system is you will always know a real accurate forecast that you can build off of.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, the product was an absolute perfect fit for the market, but they knew it was coming. And what they just ran into was the holidays and people didn't want to change jobs. So for the Q4, we kind of turned down the machine a little bit. Then after January 1st, we turned it right back up again.
I see.
But accurate forecasting is so important. And that's another thing.
That's a service that your CRO provides.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's part of accurate forecasting is one of the most important things because the owner has to know what he's dealing with. Unfortunately, the majority of forecasting out there is incorrect. It's the salesperson trying to either make themselves look better
Mm-hmm.
or they're too conservative. There's a medium ground you can reach.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that. How does your CRO increase the accuracy? Is it just spending time with the rep or training the rep?
There is a science to that just based on years of data and data that we've built. All right. I'm not going to lie. There's a BS factor, meaning that you learn with certain people. Okay. If they say 100,000, okay, half it, it's a better forecast. Right. And then there's the other side. They say 25, it's probably closer to 75.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit of the art of it. But if you look at data, odds, averages, and trends, you can provide a very accurate forecast just based on a pipeline. And the majority of that pipeline is pretty much simple math.
Mm-hmm.
And it's proven statistics that, 1 out of every 4 proposal out there will probably close. Now, we increase it to 2 out of every 4, so we plan on that for the forecast and let the owners know so they can scale.
So a lot of salespeople that I'm aware of, they love the interaction, the sales process, the psychology of sales, but they don't love documenting into Salesforce or some CRM. How do you deal with that in terms of getting them to do the hard work every day consistently?
Well, there's a recent study that just came out that 70% of salespeople spend their time not selling, that they're doing mundane tasks like entering things in the CRM. Or, they're scrubbing lists for tomorrow and things like that. There are so many tools that are inexpensive that integrate all of that, including simple things like AI dictation.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do a phone call directly from your computer, directly into a CRM, and it's recording the entire conversation with your notes. And then guess what? They don't have to enter anything into the CRM except the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can even program that in what we generally call flows, meaning that it's automatic where, okay, we had a meeting, we ranked it an A, so now in 3 days, we're going to do a follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
Or 5 days if it was a B. And then the CRM does that automatically too. It's embracing your tech stack and using it to its potential. And I could flat out tell you I've yet to go to a single client that their tech stack was maximized for sales at all.
Yeah.
They have everything they need. They just don't know how to use it.
So a lot of our clients, in the tech space, they've built a great product, but they're having trouble getting it out into the marketplace. And oftentimes these tech-led founders are also the salespeople. So when you get a client like that, take me a little bit, or take our audience that are tech-led founders through a little bit of a journey, what it's like to work with your organization to establish a professionally managed sales force.
Well, and obviously, because of the market and how competitive it is, we have a lot of tech companies that we work with,
Right.
okay, and especially in the SaaS space. And that one problem is the reality the founder doesn't have the time to focus. The other reality is that they're great at the demonstration, but they don't have the time or the skills on one of the biggest things, which is follow-up and
Right.
nurturing. And that's where you have to have somebody that knows that skill. Now, you have two choices. You could take a risk and hire somebody for a lot of money that probably is not going to work out in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, even no matter how much you like them, because let's be honest, salespeople are charming. Or you can go with a proven commodity on a fractional basis for a much less price that also grows and helps you learn how to sell and learns at the same time to teach your people how to sell. Because there's a lot of CEOs, honestly, they don't want to do sales.
Right.
They just have no choice. And sometimes they get too far in the weeds and people's eyes are glazing over. It's like, that's a great feature. I just don't really care about that feature, you know. And you have to be able to read that. But like anybody talking about their kids, right? This is my child. And so I'm going to tell you everything about my child right now, and you're going to see everything that we provide.
So when you encounter a new client, what's the typical reactions you get with those encounters? Does this concept ultimately impact their operations and results? Your service is selling, but when you're actually selling the client, what is the aha moment that you're trying to achieve with that founder that desperately needs your services?
Well, that's honestly where true CXO comes into advantage, because there is an operations specialist, there is a finance specialist, and so the collaboration of what we already know, we understand, all of us, when we walk into an organization, how sales impacts the tail on production. We understand how production impacts delivery, and delivery, of course, in collections and revenue. We understand how forecasting affects finances, especially if they've got PE backing or they're foreign owned, something of that nature. And so because of that understanding, we approach that problem with, we understand everything impacts each other. I happen to focus on the sales arena, but I'll flat out admit I need a good marketing person next to me, because I'm a salesperson. I know how to do it with the sales team working with marketing. Can I write a decent email? Of course. But can I do an ad campaign and things like that? No. And everything interacts. For too long, sales has been siloed and not considered a part of the critical operation of the entire organization, and it all works together. We use a wheel to describe it, in that everything comes together for the target from every division in the company. And from my perspective, I always keep those other divisions in mind and the impact. And believe it or not, I'll talk to those other divisions before I even meet the salespeople, because I get the truth out of them in terms of what's going on in sales. Oh, they're overestimating. Oh, we're not getting enough information, or things of that nature.
That's great. At Thrive, what we do is we're a holistic solution. So we're looking at what inhibits the growth of a company. And so it sounds like you guys have cracked the code, so to speak, on being able to significantly extend sales. But as you said, sometimes you will outpace the ability of the company to keep pace. One of the techniques that we use is, if we can get a predictable recipe, as you guys have specialized in, to be able to grow at 50% or 300% a year, what does that look like, so that the organization doesn't slow your organization down? And sometimes, it may, if we know that the company is going to need to grow by 200 or 300% within a year in order to maintain that level of growth, so the organization isn't slowing you down, you can go as fast as the market will bear. We oftentimes run into, investors, or first of all, CFOs, that say, no, we're not, because what you do is, if you say it's going to take us 9 months to put in place that organization, we need to double the size of the organization. Well, we need to start today.
Exactly.
Otherwise, we're going to be slowing you down. Do you run into situations? I mean, we have certainly overcome those barriers to saying, a CFO will say, we're not doubling the size of this organization before the revenue shows up. But if you don't do that, then you will inhibit the growth of the company. How do you deal with those situations?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one thing that makes True so unique.
Yes.
Okay. We grew up in the industry of, you had a 1-year plan, and then my personal favorite, you had a 5-year plan, and then you rewrote the 5-year plan after every year.
Every year.
Right?
Yeah.
Everything we do is based on a 90-day plan, because market conditions change that rapidly. Number one, it helps hold us accountable. You have the exact metrics, you have the exact what we're going to do, and that's our Bible for that 90 days. Then we go to the next 90 days, do another 90-day plan. And so that's the freebie for today.
So you're getting the buy-in every 90 days.
Every 90 days, including pivots in the market, strategy changes after talking to marketing, talking to finance, things of that nature. You're ahead much faster knowing what's coming based on that plan. And the numbers are starting to come in behind the plan from the last 90 days. And so it automatically has credibility in forming the next 90-day plan. It doesn't take that long to do.
Right.
Especially if the machine's running like it's supposed to be running. Believe it or not, it takes longer to get the machine running like it's supposed to be running than the plan, simply because people freestyle, people are people. One of the things we try to do is that for the longest time you had people running sales and every one of them had their own process, okay? Not a bad thing. Revenue's growing and it's great. But then when changes would occur, they had a baby, something happened in their family, something life-altering would drop revenue immediately because their processes were all in their head. So we glean those processes to come up with the best process and put it first and then take care of the people.
Right.
That way, everybody's following the same process and then they really can compare notes. Salesperson, yeah, I went and had a beer with Bill and it was a great night and we're going to do business together, right? The other salesperson said, well, when I was talking to Bill, he really liked the layout that I did. Okay, so obviously our ideal customer persona wants the detail and wants to be taken out for a beer. Every organization's unique, but that's why those 90 days change. And that's why we do it that way. And it also provides accountability because a lot of organizations that do outsource selling or CRO as a service or sales management as a service, there's no accountability metric for what they're doing.
Right.
And owners have a tendency to only look at one thing, top line revenue. There's a lag, always. And so you have to show them, okay,
we're making the sales pipeline is increasing.
You had 10 leads when we walked in the door, and now you're at 30.
Right.
That's progress.
And they're going through the pipeline.
Right.
When you're going back to the salesperson level, obviously when you do the assessment, you have salespeople that aren't performing and you have to move on. But when you're recruiting, are you finding that you're able to recruit top talent, or do you have to recruit, just the right kind of core talent, but that you have to train it?
It depends on the role because there is a market shift in that salespeople were working 15, 16, 17 hours a day. And if they can get to a point where they can get a little slower lifestyle and more commissions, you can recruit them well if they get a better lifestyle out of it. And especially as the age of salespeople have changed, lifestyle and balance has become really important. So process is important, but it depends on what you're looking for as well. We use the Solomon sales system, meaning sales is actually 3 functions, not one.
Right.
Lead generation, lead nurturing, and closing.
Right.
Sometimes you need 2, a power closer that's not good at paperwork at all, and a lead generator and a lead nurturer to handle all the paperwork. But the pricing works out that your revenue easily, your ROI on that is a complete balance. It just depends on the nature of what you need, and we have to analyze what you need.
Now, when you bring in a fractional CRO, is that person also a fractional CRO at other companies at the same time?
Yes, because in most cases, we run 2, 3, 5 accounts depending. Okay.
What about the salespeople? Are they dedicated to that client, or are they also, do they have the ability to make more money by working multiple accounts into the same, say, enterprise?
In our model, we're very, very clear in that they're working on 2. It's really hard to take salespeople that we bring on and work on any more than 2 clients.
Right.
Okay. But it's easy to shift gears, for 2. But if you add 3 or 4, you can't do it.
Right.
But that helps the salespeople make more money as well.
Exactly. So you're attracting better salespeople, you're retaining better salespeople because they're making more money than they would with a single-sourced company.
Well, yes, and same as before. 20 years ago, manufacturers reps represented 9 or 10 lines.
True.
And then they would go to different stops, and depending on what the customer needed, that's the line that they pitched.
Right.
And they made a great living, commission only, which is dead now, unfortunately, in most cases. But they made a great living doing that because they had, 10 line cards and they had every solution you possibly could want. the shift that's occurring now is you have to be a little bit more focused. And so it's hard to do 10 product lines at once.
Right.
So
Makes sense. Well, last question, in terms of where you see, where do you see your organization going, with the advancement of technology, as you said, makes time saving. Where do you see your model evolving to over the coming years?
well, it's really funny because the fractional CFO model has been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the education behind a fractional CRO, CMO, any of those roles, it's still not believable. People still want to pay for the time when you can get the talent for half the price and get double the results, right? But it's educating the public to do that. So we're on an active education campaign, improving our education content. And we just see the organization continuing to grow because one thing that is happening is people get tired of going 8 to 5, the same grind every single day. They want a little variety in their life, especially as they're getting older.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the same industry for 25 years, working with a lot of small and medium businesses. But now I have fun because I'm in tech, I'm in oil and gas, I'm in energy, I'm in all these different industries. But the thing I love about it is the process works.
Mm-hmm.
The techniques work. And we just see it continuing to grow because the quality of salespeople, let alone the mental health of salespeople, is declining.
Mm-hmm.
So the strong salespeople that can really get it done are getting harder and harder to find. So we just see this growing more and more.
Well, that's good. Well, a little bonus question then. In terms of where you get your clients, is it word of mouth? Are you aligned with, say, PE companies that are acquiring companies and want to see faster results? Where do you find most of your business coming from?
All of the above. So we do a lot of work with PEs
Oh, you
that
do?
want their companies to grow. Okay,
Right.
that was really our first source. And then referrals, especially in O&G,
Mm-hmm.
you end up, that's the network,
Mm-hmm.
and so referrals are very big there. We do a lot of our own cold outreach through doing various techniques, using LinkedIn, using cold email, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Then of course following it up with phone calls. But people are leaning on AI too much, and they're not starting conversations. And that's why that's not working right now. And people have to learn that it still needs to be personal. A philosophy I firmly believe is 5 years from now, it's not whether you use AI, it's how well you use it compared
Mm-hmm.
to your competition. And I agree with that phrase. But the one thing is the AI can never pivot like a salesperson can and build that relationship. And that's what matters, is just the ability to listen to
Mm-hmm.
what the client wants and needs.
Right.
That is the number one skill.
Well, and that feedback loop is so important to the rest of the organization. Your salespeople are on the front lines, and in order for the company to pivot, they have to have that intelligence coming in from salespeople that are listening to the prospects and
And
to
it
their
has to be
clients.
accurate.
Yes, I agree. Well, I really appreciate your insights and your time today. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Thrive Podcast. I hope the discussion with Bob has been insightful, practical, and applicable to your entrepreneurial journey. If you found value in today's conversation, please like, comment, subscribe, and share the episode with your fellow entrepreneurs. Your support enables us to continue bringing valuable content to the community. Until next time, keep thriving. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bill. It was a pleasure. Appreciate being on.